Quitting fixes the habit, but discipline fixes the patterns. AKA, quitting removes the behavior, but not the weaknesses behind it. What am I trying to say? Just because you said you quit doesn't mean you've actually quit. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And you guys are probably like, oh, what is this young guy saying? All right, I am a young guy. But I have faced years and years and years of addiction, and it was hard. It's not that simple. One mental commitment does not create a solution. I have friends, and I'm sure you guys know people too, where they'll say, I quit smoking. And this literally happened to me. And I said, oh, great. How long has it been? Oh, I quit today, but I feel pretty confident about this time. And to me, I can't say too much to those people. I really can't. Because a lot of the times, most people don't want to hear the answers. They don't want help. They really don't. If they wanted help, they would be actively seeking it. They would be actively seeking it. If they really cared that much about quitting, they would do everything they could. I didn't care enough about quitting smoking when I was addicted to nicotine and all those other things that I was doing. I didn't care enough. Quite frankly, I enjoyed it too much. Although I had deep down in my head, I had this idea and I had a time frame and I had a time limit and how much time I could do this for. I did quit cold turkey. And I quit for 2 years. A little over 2 years. But all it took was one trigger. I got a new job when I got back. And we had a little business trip in Denver. And one of my coworkers, which I was sharing a room with, had a vape with him. And for some reason, that triggered something in me. And the second I got back home, I was back into it all. I was addicted again. I had to fight through these temptations like never before. I had to fight like there was nothing else because I had made a commitment to myself and I just felt so ashamed. That's when I started to learn discipline. And I learned discipline through failing, funny enough. I got back and I usually this is how the process would go. I would have this disposable vape, which only lasts about a week to 2 weeks, depending on how much you use it. And by the end of those 2 weeks or a week and a half or whatever, I was committed enough and I'd been working myself through it. I just felt sick. I felt gross, and I always felt this way. And I had enough reason to quit, right? And I had the idea, the exact motivation I needed to quit. And so I'd throw it away. And maybe I would go a week without it. And I've got a greater point beyond this to really solve and drill it down because I learned one thing through this all that I wouldn't have learned if I hadn't struggled so much. And I'm going to share that with you guys. Something that nobody's going to tell you because nobody truly solves their problems. Regardless, it was 1 week on, 1 week off. Eventually, it would be like I'd have another relapse, 2 weeks on. It would be a really bad little bit, or 3 weeks on. Sometimes it would last about a month. And then somehow I would build the motivation, cut it off. It would be 2 weeks off, or sometimes 3 weeks off, until eventually, within a year, not even joking, within 1 year, I was able to withstand a month to 2 months. Then somehow I'd fall back in, have one, couple bad cycles, couple really good cycles, and then I would quit for 4 months. Even within those 4 months, I would have temptations, and then something would happen. I'd fall back in, right? This continued, and it continued on for a little, but it was through this process that I had this epiphany towards the beginning of this process, within the first year of this cycle, in which I could no longer, and this is the point I'm trying to get to you guys, the one thing you guys are missing. I'd realized there was no way I was going to make it on my own. None of what I was doing was going to work. So I submitted to the Lord, submitted to God in prayer, and I begged him for the help that I needed. I came clean to my Father in heaven. I found my spiritual leaders in my community, and I came clean to them. And I told him, this is what I want for my life. That was the commitment that it took. At this point, I needed to know if God had forgiven me. And that's what I was going through the cycle of. So finally, it was no longer 4 months off. It was a whole year. And I started thinking to myself, am I ready? At this point, I needed to know if God had forgiven me because I wasn't confident in myself. And I know a lot of you guys, when you're in the depths of addiction, you feel shame, you feel the guilt. And you just cannot be sure if God has validated you and given you that permission to go on and live life clean. And I decided I was going to get serious and I was going to start praying every night, asking for forgiveness, or asking to know if I had been forgiven or if I could move on with my life. And I did this every night, and every single time I'd receive the same answer. And it was the really fast yes right from the beginning, but then followed with feelings of doubt. No, I haven't been forgiven. I've got another video talking about this and why I think this happens based off of the chemistry of the brain and everything, and how Satan might utilize different parts of the brain, how God utilizes different parts of the brain. But what I learned after a little bit is I'd been praying and praying and praying night and night after, and then I had an epiphany. God has forgiven me. But have I forgiven myself? And I felt very strongly in that moment as I was kneeling down in my room that I had been forgiven and that I could go on with my life. And that's exactly what I did. Without discipline, old patterns return in new forms. If you are not disciplined towards quitting your addictions, then they will come back in new forms. If you fail to acknowledge and confront your addictions head on, then the second you are tempted, the second you're in a position where you are vulnerable, you will fall back in. I've not been tempted to smoke. I've not been tempted to drink. I've not been tempted for any of those things ever since those days because my commitment to myself and to God is so much stronger. The feelings, I don't even remember what it was like anymore because it has been a good amount of time. It's been a long time. I don't know how much time now. I don't choose to think about that or to glorify that in any way. In fact, I'm very careful when I am on YouTube and I do talk about my addictions because I don't want to glorify it in any way. And I don't want you guys to glorify it because I remember when people told me things like this, I glorified it growing up. Oh, how cool of a story. Well, I missed the point. And I don't want you guys to miss the point too. Remember, discipline is what keeps progress when motivation fades. When your motivation to quit, when you decide that day, like my friend, oh, I'm quitting today. When that motivation fades, which is, I promise, probably not going to be, it's not going to even beat the day. When that fades, discipline is what will keep the progress moving. Everybody, my name is Gabriel Bowman. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that this video was an answer to some of your prayers. And if it was, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of my future videos. I have a whole playlist that I'm creating right now. This is, I believe, the second video in this installment on this whole idea of addiction. So go check that playlist out. You'll find it. And I promise you, you are sure to find answers to questions, concerns that you didn't even know you had answers for. And I've got answers for you too. Anyways, without further ado, I'm going to keep it short and simple, and I'll see you next week. Bye.